Are Nazis the most hated enemy of humanity? Because in the West, Nazis are the face of evil in terms of history. But if you ask a Korean or Chinese who the face of evil is, then they would probably say Imperial Japan. Or Soviet Russia's neighbors would say Soviet Russia. My point being, the most hated enemy is mostly a geological and cultural thing. Also, if we talk about all time, then no. Like the Poles and Germans hated the Swedes with passion during 1600–1700 due to the Swedish Deluge. The Ottoman Empire straight up paraded Vlad Tepes' dead body, and then split it in 5 parts and sent to the corners of the empire, and leaving the head in the capital cause they were so happy that this evil figure was gone. Cato the Elder ended his sentences in meetings with Carthage must be destroyed, though the Romans were kinda the bad guys. And many other situations where a country, culture, or people is reviled for some kind of most of the time fucked up shit they have done. On a broader timeline, the Jewish people themselves have been hated nearly as much. The Nazis weren't the first to blame Jews. No, mosquitoes are #1 hated period. Edit, then rabies, and then Nazis. Pedophiles are even looked down on by criminals. No, that would be the Daleks. Nazis were made to be the big bad, the ultimate evil, the monster under your bed. Unfortunately, they were mostly just misguided, frustrated, and frightened people. We don't want to believe that regular people can perform atrocities, but they can and do. We stripped the humanity out of them when teaching WW2 to the next few generations. We taught people to watch out for swastikas and hand gestures instead of learning how to spot fascist and genocidal rhetoric and policy. The truth is that most empires throughout history have acted similarly to the Nazis. They are the most well-known example of the primal urges we are constantly beating back to build a better society. Reddit isn't real life. The richest man in the world just did a Nazi salute at the US presidential inauguration, and the governing political party backed him completely. So not hated enough, I'd say. I wonder if you guys even realize how complicated and bloody entire human history is, instead of simplifying the history so much that Hitler turns into some sort of a humanity's black hole. For a while I thought Islamic extremists would take that crown. They were a lot worse than the Nazis at the time. But because it happened in Europe, it's worse. Japan was a lot worse at the time. Even the Hitler was disgusted on what they were doing. But because Japan did it in Asia, it doesn't count. Good old racism at work. If Hitler invaded Asia or Africa, it wouldn't be seen as even bad. That's what's disgusting about history. Thanks to Hollywood? Yes. Historically? No. Far from it. No. Nazis just happen to be pretty recent in the living history of the world. There's been plenty of totally horrendous groups of people through history. Feels like since the dawn of time, it's been Jews for some fucking reason. Nazis were a product from that hate and more. What about the French? I think Nazis are just the most recent. It was only 80 years ago that the war ended. There are still people alive who remember the end of that war, so there is recency bias. What worries me is just how easily people are willing to forget history or try to rewrite it. Because the Nazi ideology of wiping out an undesirable race just seems too appealing for some. There was an interesting phenomenon after the US Civil War when the Daughters of the Confederacy were able to teach the alternate history of the war, to paint the slave-owning Confederate as the noble and friendly hero and rebel against a tyrannical Northern force who wanted to oppress the poor defenseless South. Or at least that's how they like to teach it. We're starting to see this play out again with neo-Nazis trying to diminish the events of WW2 and deny the Holocaust. This has been blatantly accelerated by apartheid trying to support as many fascist governments as possible whilst also raiding the US Treasury. But history is being rewritten once more by the losers of the war to seem more empathetic and as the oppressed, rather than the scourge of the earth that they once were. Look up Vladimir the Impaler, he's literally who Count Dracula is based on. Pedos. They're another group of people hated for the past 2,000 years that are still hated today. People hate Hitler because he exclusively targeted a group of people. Stalin killed far more, but it was his own and everybody, so nobody has a problem with it.